Welcome, everyone, to our mini workshop on finding out whether or not your home is a healthy one or is it actually hurting you. My name is Fran Babashak, and I'm so happy to introduce you to someone I met, and I've never met anyone like him who does what he does. But what we have in share in common is our passion for helping people live their healthiest lives. My business is all about educating people on how to make healthier choices with what they put on their skin and what they put in their bodies, and also flushing toxins out of their bodies. And Adam's passion is about educating people on ways to heal their home and also evaluating their home to see if it's a healthy one. Maybe you don't even have any issues, but it's a great thing to check and find out, because once you hear his story, you'll realize why he got into this business, why he's passionate about it, and how he's helped so many, heal their homes. So my guest, Adam Siskala of alchemyspectrum.com, is passionate about healing your home, and he also is very able to assist those with autism in helping them become more self-empowered. And he does feel a connection between the two, with the home and the autism spectrum. And so I had never heard of the term geomancy before, and that's what he does. And so I'm going to let Adam explain exactly what geomancy is. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, hi, Fran. Thanks for having me. And it's great to be able to share the information out to people, because, like you say, we both share the same passion for, the wellness and health of the people. So it's important to raise as much awareness as we can in order to help people out there, especially these days of all these different variants and everything that's going out there, which is a lot more than it was even 5 years ago. So it's more crucial today than it is, back then. So
absolutely. Well, one of the ways you got started was a very personal story, and if you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners, it's pretty powerful.
Sure. Yeah, because I've always been very sensitive to the natural earth energies and the natural earth energy grid. And at a very young age, at the age of 20, I lost both my parents within 19 months of each other. And I always wanted to know why, I lost both my parents within such a short space of time. And it took me around about 18 years later to discover the real truth on why I lost both my parents. And not only did I lose both my parents, but about 2 to 3 years after I lost both my parents, my brother was diagnosed with permanent health conditions as well, which he still suffers from today due to the house being affected by geopathic stress. And the term geopathic stress is basically any disturbances to the natural earth energies that emanate from the ground, basically, that we're subjected to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Earth's natural electric magnetic fields, such as ley lines and the earth grid, because we're all basically connected to the planet within our nature. We're connected to it, and any disturbance to those disturbances, be them natural or man-made, can become toxic to human biology. So what I discovered was the main contributing factor to the loss of my parents was the house we were living in was used as a former granite quarry. And granite contributes to one of the toxic natural gases called radon gas. So if anybody has any granite under their house, it could be 200 feet below their ground, it has the potential to release this toxic gas into the house, especially if the house has been built previously, pre-2000 basically. Then there were no precautions done to reduce radon gas from coming into the house. But because this house was built in the 1960s, there were no precautions, and it was actually tested at a time 3 years prior to the death of my parents. It was confirmed that radon gas was actually present within the house, but not at a level that needed immediate action. So whether that was a false reading or the actual monitor wasn't in the right place of the house where the highest concentration. So they both died within 19 months of each other due to the side effects of long-term exposure to that radon gas, unfortunately. So That's what led me into finding
And
out the reasons for it. And then I thought, well, hang on, I lost both my parents within 19 months of each other. My brother had long-term health issues, permanent long-term health issues as a result. Why was I the only person in the house who wasn't affected by it? And through my work in geomancy and looking at the house healing modality, that's when everything just clicked in together. And that's when I found the answers. And that's what led me on to the work that I do. And the simple reason why I was the only one which wasn't affected was due to where my bedroom was. There was this absolutely gorgeous golden cedar tree, this conifer tree, which basically had a conial shape. And because of the geometry of that, it has an impact on the earth energy. So it's transmuting the effects of the radon gas. So where my bedroom was, it wasn't affected by that radon gas because of the healing property, natural healing properties of the tree, and also the geometry of the tree. So that was the main reason.
fascinating. Some of the common factors that play into the health of someone's home.
Yeah, so some of the common factors are if anybody's got, well, they wouldn't know, but if there's an underground water stream under the house, for example, could be 200-300 feet below the ground, they're not aware of it. And if they're not aware of it, because of the difference in the earth energies when it hits the water level underground, and then there's usually a gap of air between the rock face and the water, that changes the frequency and the vibration of the energy going from the ground. And as soon as it reaches ground level, because there's no obstruction from the underground rocks or soil or earth, that accelerates at a high rate, and it's that high rate of frequency that can be detrimental to human biology. But one of the telltale signs to look out for example, if there's any underground water, which is an effect of geopathic stress, is if a house has got any signs of mold or any watermarks or condensation, or feels more humid or even colder than any other room for no rational explanation, such as everything's perfectly sealed, the room is ventilated, there's no reason why there should be any damp in a particular room, and it happens to be damp, 9 times out of 10, it's caused by something that's under the ground that needs to be addressed, that people don't know how to address or what's causing it. So that's usually a telltale sign to look out for.
Okay, that's one thing. What are some of the others?
And one of the main ones, which most people notice, is fatigue. If you're constantly feeling tired when you're in a home, and if you go outside, go somewhere else, you feel more awake and less fatigued, that's usually a telltale sign that there's a disturbance to the energy within the home. And especially if people wake up between the hours of 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning on a regular basis, that tends to be another sign that the house is affected by geopathic stress, because these energies tend to be a lot stronger during those times of the night. So that's why people tend to wake up at night. And also a side effect of geopathic stress is it prevents the body producing the hormones it naturally requires in order to stay healthy. So with sleep, for example, the hormone for sleep that body requires is melatonin. So if the pineal gland, which is the main gland within the body that produces melatonin, if that's being subject to geopathic stress, it prevents the pineal gland from secreting melatonin. And if the body hasn't got that melatonin, people are going to have the sleeping issues. So that's another telltale sign.
Interesting. Well, when Adam and I decided to do this workshop, he offered to do an example on my home. And all I did was give him the address. He's over in England. And with all of his tools, using geography and history, and I'll let you explain the rest. I'm going to let him share the screen and do his magic. Hope he's got good news.
To respect Fran's privacy, we're not going to identify her actual house when I'm sharing my screen. We'll just look at the proximity to the area that she lives at, because that will give me telltale sign. We'll show you guys what sort of things to look out for that can be detrimental, which people wouldn't notice or take for granted, which could have an impact to the people living in the homes. So the first thing that Fran did was just sent me on a message her address and a zip code. And one of the first process I would do is bring up the house, the home, on Google Earth, so I can get a view of the location and to see if there are any disturbances. because I've got over 40 years experience with these earth energies, and because I've been studying geomancy, which is the study of these natural earth energies, for the last 7 years. I've acquired so much knowledge about this subject. So as soon as I bring up someone's house on Google Earth, I can identify straight away whether the house is affected. So for example, when I brought up the details using Google Earth, I could see this area in the center of the screen here. To me, I could tell you that's got some signs of distress. And the telltale signs for any people who, who are novices to this, who wouldn't know what to look out for, is if we look closely at this area here, we can see that there's a difference in the colouring of the earth and off the ground on here. So that would signify to me that there is a disturbance caused by something that's underground. It could be historical mining, such as coal mining, quarrying, or it could have been an old lake or reservoir that's been filled in. There's some kind of natural disturbance. And the other signs I would look out for is just where I'm pointing here now, there's a lake, which that will tell me it's a man-made lake. It's not a natural lake. And also just up here, there's another lake, which they call a lock, I believe, up there, being where you are. Again, that looks man-made to me. So that will tell me that this area is affected. And then I will look into further to see exactly what could be affecting that area. So what I've actually done is zoomed in a bit closer to the area and just looked at this area of land, what looks like wasteland, to give me some ideas on what that could potentially be. So as soon as I clicked on the information of that area, it came up with the Midlothian Mines Park. So that will automatically tell me that this area, where all these houses are built upon an area either on or close by to where these historical mines were. And then that will open up a whole new can of worms for me, because it will come up with the potential dangers of having your house being built on top of these historical mines, because of the history of it, and it's a disruption to the earth energy. Because you extract coal from the ground, you create a scar in the ground, and it changes the frequency of the energy going through the earth into the house. So this whole area, because these mines would have been closed around about 200 years ago. Because studying American history, it was in the 1800s, these mines would have been active, and it would have taken around about 150, 200 years for the land to be declared to a safe level that houses could be potentially built on it to prevent them from subsiding, collapsing, because of the underground tunnels caused by the mining, the shafts and the extraction, and a potential flooding and what's been going on. And for houses built above it, that is more liable for subsidence and houses being collapsed. So, and also it creates radon gas and methane gas in some of the shafts and tunnels which are still there, which can be potentially dangerous to the houses. And another way, I can tell you
that someone we knew who lives about 2 miles away, about 10 years ago, their whole backyard collapsed. It was a mine shaft, and I didn't think the mines went that far through Midlothian, but it was about 2 miles away, and I was like, what? I thought they were just around here.
Yeah, because just simply by looking at this image, going back to the first image, we can see this whole area here, basically, when we're going through in the middle, this whole area, as you can see, it's quite a few kilometres, either side, has been used and is affected by the discoloration of the ground. We can see, because if we look to the further to the west, we can see this particular area seems more lush, more succulent, and more green. So this area of Midlothian is, wouldn't have been used for the mining, because it's more naturally healthy just by looking at the appearance. And then another tool I would use as well is this is a simple same image we've seen previously, but this is a Google Earth image taken from 1994. So we can see that the area where the houses were on this side was all forestry, and these houses would have been built, pre-1990. So these houses, for example, would be at much higher risk of radon gas, because no remedial work would have been done at the time for the building in order to make sure no radon gas is present, whereas the settlement and houses to the west looks like they were built after the year 2000. And because of the regulations in the building, regulations since the effect of radon gas, especially in the 1990s, any houses built after the year 2000 have to comply with the new laws, where they have to put plastic sheeting under the foundations of the actual house. So if there is any radon gas in the area, it won't seep into the house. So that would be one thing that, you know, these to the west would not be affected by radon, whereas I would check for radon gas to these older ones here, which were built previously to 1999. We can see on the current screen on Google Earth is you've got the road that was built here and that lake. So simply by building that road and building new houses, it will destroy the natural energy from the trees, especially if you build a road, main road running through it, because obviously it's more peaceful with all the trees, and you build a road in it with traffic going in both directions, you know, 16-wheeler trucks going through, whatever it happens to be, it creates chaos within the energy field on there. So that can potentially be, you know, over a long period of time can be detrimental to health as well.
What is the red line going across?
The red line is, I identified it myself. I put there's a ley line running through there. So what a ley line is, it's a natural earth energy line, which is aligned with certain ancient monuments, such as churches, temples, cathedrals, castles, because they knew, previous civilizations knew, and were in more harmony with the natural earth energies. So they use them to benefit humanity, the energies of it.
How can you find a ley line? Like, how would they have known, especially pre-technology way back then?
It's one of the tools that I use myself, which is dowsing, but I use a more advanced method of dowsing, which is called radiesthesia, which is basically, you can use rods, but I use a crystal pendulum and basically douse for these energy lines from the map. So I can bring up Google Earth and say, you know, is there a ley line in this Google Earth map? And then just simply by pointing my finger to the area of the map, I can say whereabouts it's going through, the direction and the strength of the energy line. So that can be done through dowsing, which is a modality that has been used for, you know, over 10,000 years and has been proven in various ancient Egyptians even used it. You know, the churches, the Roman Catholics, the Christians building their churches, they would have had some priests or other specialists who would have used dowsing in order to say whether that's a suitable place to build a church because of the high healing energy of that place. So it's more healing and beneficial to humanity, which is why if you go into a church or a cathedral, you automatically get a sense of peace and healing because of the natural earth energies which are concentrated due to the material that are used to build the cathedral, for example.
So that's good that my home is somewhat close to one of those, I'm guessing.
So it is, but even if the energy
really needs to be right on it.
Yeah, it's not good to be right on it, even if it's a positive energy on a positive energy, because that energy can be too high for the human biology to actually cope with. It's the same thing if we take the Himalayan yogis, for example, and Buddhists in mountains, you know, in Asia or something like that. They have to meditate, you know, for 10 hours a day sometimes in order to be at a certain vibration, in order so they can actually live with those energies. Whereas if somebody who's stressed up and got lots of anxiety decided to live in that place, they would be, you know, their health would deteriorate because of the difference between the energies. So it's important to balance those energies out, which is what house healing does. It creates that equilibrium between the human biology and the natural earth energies to create that balance, and that's where healing occurs.
So interesting. What else have you got?
Yeah, and one of the other interesting points as well is that I would use is a geology survey map. So this, for example, is from the Virginia Department of Energy, which is an online geological mapping tool. So I can
Okay.
just put in the address details or a location in the search bar, and it will come up with something like this. And these different colors indicate a difference into the soil type that's underground, which can give me a ton of information. So we can see where Fran lives. It's covered by these two green areas, and both these
Mhm.
green areas, as we can see just by clicking on one of those, the primary rock type is sandstone.
Mhm.
So basically, that will give me a clue as to, that Fran's house is potentially built upon sandstone, and some of the side effects of having too much sandstone that could affect biology is because of the content of silica, which is basically like the crystals you find in the sand, the clear crystals, which is a mineral. And too much of that mineral, especially if you're sleeping above it, and if you've got any problems with calcium, so if your bones are a bit weaker, or any problems with your teeth, even having things, because calcium carbonate is another mineral that can be contained within sandstone. So if
Mhm.
there is a high percentage of calcium carbonate within a sandstone, it's the same as calcium as what we've got in the bones. So that frequency would be affecting the human biology for teeth, for example, and the bones, and
Mhm.
increasing the chance of gallstones, for example, the excess buildup of calcium in the body. And that if it's too potentially toxic for a long period of time, it can lead to cancer, for example. So, I mean, I can start giving you some examples of what things you could look out for in your own home, to give you an example. So because we know that the sandstone is directly under Fran's house, we can start by asking the questions, do you or anybody in your house suffer from grinding their teeth at night, or have any dental issues such as cavities, having to have fillings? So is that something that you could relate to?
Yeah, I grind my teeth. I have to wear a night guard.
There you go, that's a classic sign. So that would tell me that the sandstone that's under your house has got a large content of calcium carbonate, because we had the same issue in the old house we lived at, which is about 6 miles from where we are now, because there used to be an old sandstone quarry, because there were some rocks that were left in about 400 years ago. It was used as a quarry to build some of the buildings in the historical town. And the whole family, we all had to have these silicon mouth guards, because including our two sons, were grinding our teeth during the night, and we did not know why that was until we moved into the house we're in now, and all that teeth grinding was completely stopped, and none of us were
And
actually having it.
it never started until I moved to this house.
So that's a
Interesting.
classic sign that
Mhm.
this confirms that yes, you have got that material under it, and you've got that calcium carbonate, which is a high content in that particular sandstone. And people wouldn't assume that could affect your health, because nobody's going to say, you know, what's under your ground and material can potentially affect things like grinding your teeth, for example.
Right, right. Though I have like a cement slab underneath, it's porous enough that all that affects.
It's still what's underground, because obviously that energy has to come from the ground, and it's that
Mhm.
concentration of that mineral and the energy running through it. Even if you've got like concrete slabbing on it, it's still got that frequency and that energy of that calcium carbonate. And because energy attracts like, basically like energy attracts like, it will try to find a frequency that matches that calcium carbonate. And because teeth, for example, they're more exposed because they haven't got any tissue or any skin, or any flesh covering it, that's going to be one of the first things that are affected, because that's going to be attracted to calcium, which is the teeth. Whereas bones are more protected by flesh, skin, and all sorts. So
Muscles, yeah. Interesting. Wow. Anything else I need to know about my house?
there's lots of other things as well, because you've got sands, especially with sandstone. Any history to the area. So you've got the coal mines, for example, and I'm sure, as it was the first place in the US to introduce coal mining, there would have been things in the area such as accidents happening in the mines, explosions happening because of the flammable gases, methane or something like that. And because
There's a
sandstone,
terrible fire there. Yeah.
so things like that will be stored, because sandstone is a storage device basically of energy, which is why historical buildings, churches, castles were built sandstone, because of their energy harvesting. It's like a giant battery basically of the energy on it. So some of those can potentially still be stored within the house. So if anything happened within close proximity to your house, such as an explosion in the shaft, for example, that's close by, that energy would still be there. But it would affect people today, not necessarily as in explosions, what happened in the past. It will create a pattern of repeated behaviors. So if you've got any addictions, such as someone could be addicted to, chocolate bars, Klondike bars, or coffee, or even alcohol, or any other kind of like addictive behaviors, it's because of that energy contained within the sandstone is similar, to those kind of energies, because that's repetitive behavior, because it's stored in it. So addictive behaviors tend to be more difficult to get rid of if you've got things like sandstone directly under your home, because those two energies conflict with each other. So that's something as a house healer we'll look into further, and ensuring that all that stored energy, which is potentially detrimental, is actually cleared and removed, so that if anything else is stored in there now, if you store positive energy, within that, you're going to have that positive energy coming into the human biology and stuff. And reducing, curing addictions, for example, it's a great way to cure addictions, because one of the contributing factors to it, stored emotional events or memories within that sandstone, will no longer affect the person living in the house.
Wow. So fascinating.
So there's a lot
Really
more to it. There's so much to it. This is just, giving you
the iceberg.
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Goodness. Well, thank you so much. If you guys want to learn more about what Adam does, I highly encourage you to check out his website. I will post it below, alchemyspectrum.com. And there's a fascinating YouTube video as he goes through someone's home and talks about some of the internal things in the house, that just even decor that affects the energy in your home. And, as far as once you've identified some of those toxins through Adam's work, I can absolutely help you, through some of our detox teas and our detox cleanse, and just healing through probiotics and prebiotics. I'd love to help flush all that stuff out of you, because it builds up in time and it causes so many issues. There's a long list on Adam's website of things that this bad energy can manifest in your own human biology. So thank you so much, Adam. I really enjoyed this.
And just like to give you some information, the work that you do, Fran, detoxifying the body, that's so important to do. It's something I would advise everybody, not even if the house is, potentially affected by geopathic stress, is to, boost your immune system, help your body, to naturally stay healthy. And one of the best ways is to detoxify as many toxins on everyday products that we consume, we put on our skin, reduce those toxins in it. Because I had a look at the website and the products that you do, and that whole long list of all these toxins that are in everyday products in your supermarkets. It's important to get rid of those. So someone like Fran will be less affected by the geopathic stress, because she's looking after her health and her body. So she'll be less likely to get the side effects of this, because she's getting rid of the toxins. So that's a great important help. And also, one recommendation I would recommend to people as well, if it's a new area subject as well, is about the environment, because the work that Fran does as well obviously contribute, things you put on your skin and things we consume, that constitutes as being part of the environment. So because my mentor was saying that the home counts for 1/3, and the environment, that can be loads of different things associated with it, such as everyday products, accounts for another 1/3, and the third part is the actual person's individual mindset and stuff. So by conquering the environment and the home, you're 2/3 of the way there in order to have that health that we require. And one of the books I would recommend people to read, which explains about the effects of the environment in general, and this includes, toxins we put on our body, and also geopathic stress and the effect in the house, how that affects human biology. So this is a book called The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Limpton, who was a cell biologist, and he's done some incredible studies at Stanford University, introducing the new science of epigenetics, which basically tells us that cells can be programmed, can be changed, for health and improvement, and we're not basically a victim of our cells in our body. We can actually change those cells in order so they can start healing themselves and stuff like that. So that is a book where Bruce Lipton explains all that in a way that's easy to understand and not in that scientific terminology where a lot of scientists do. So I would highly recommend, picking this book up, and that can, even by reading that, raise the awareness of the environmental implications. So.
Oh, fantastic. I haven't heard of that one. I will definitely want to read that. That's awesome. I love your 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That is great, frame, and mindset is huge, huge, huge. That is a big part of my business that we talk about all the time, and to constantly work on it, because, you are what you think you are. You have to, you change the story. You're telling yourself the same story. There's not necessarily truth to it. So change up your story, and you will absolutely change your life.
Absolutely. And that's why, it actually explains it in this book in a way that anybody can actually understand from basically what you're saying, because it tells you about the consciousness. So, what you're talking about, changing your mindset, there's an element of consciousness in that. Making the subconscious conscious. If you're aware of something, you can actually do something to prevent it, such as your health, or getting rid of the toxins, for example. If you're not aware of it, something's toxic or poisonous, what can you do about it? So it's so important what you say, Fran. Absolutely.
Well, this has been so educational and so mind-blowing, and I really appreciate all the work you did in looking into my home. Thank you, Adam. Everybody check out Adam's website and see how he can assist you, or maybe people especially those on the spectrum. He has had a lot of luck, and not luck, but just a lot of progress and assistance in helping those really become more self-empowered. Thank you, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Fran.